All right, great.
Four.
Also joining us is Ademola Henry Adigun, the Chief Executive Officer, AHA Consultancies. Please, can we put a round of applause for our panelists, please? And let's encourage them. Also joining us online, Lola Adekoye, Deputy Regional Director for Africa, Center for International Private Enterprise. Do we have Lola? Do we have Lola with us? All right, while we get a hold of her, we do also have Ibrahima Aidara, the Deputy Director for Natural Resource Governance Institute. A better round of applause. Come on, guys. It's in the morning. Let's do better than that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Now, I like to start with the hows and the whys because it does create a better platform for understanding. So we're going to be starting off with Ibrahima Aidara, and let's take a look at the term corrosive capital. Now, it's becoming more widely used, but it's not always clearly understood. How does corrosive capital enter African resource sectors, and what early warnings do you think that the governments as well as regulatory bodies should be looking out for? Ibrahima. Oh. All right, unfortunately, he's not here with us at the moment. We'll go ahead and move on to Ademola Henry Adigun. So one of the persistent challenges that we have in the extractive sector is that policies across ministries, finance, petroleum, environment, trade, they often conflict, creating loopholes that enable leakages. Now, how do we create a cohesive, a coherent policy that will help for us to plug these loopholes?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'll challenge the assertion about conflicting policies. The problems are not conflicting policies. It's conflicting interpretation and implementation of those policies. Nobody would design a policy that creates a loophole in any sector. What normally happens is people subjectively interpret those policies and implement them to the benefits of those loopholes they want to create. So the challenge is more of having reinforcement agencies that punish those who bypass the loopholes. What Nigeria doesn't lack, or West Africa doesn't lack, is good policies. We have policies that are more than policies. But what we always lack is diligent implementation, improper understanding, and lack of prosecution of those who infringe on policies. You can get away with it. You can get away with anything across many of our countries. And then the other part of it is the politics of the policy-making process. The same policy which one government follows properly, another government will subvert and implement it properly again. So what we lack are decisions and mechanisms that can restore confidence in people's behavior and punish those who are deviants from policy interpretation. Thank you.
All right, still looking at the government. Now, we have illicit financial flows that have thrived where agencies have lacked shared database, joint audits, or integrated monitoring systems. What steps are being taken or should be taken to strengthen interagency coordination to curb illicit financial flows in the extractive sector?
So part of things is what we are doing here. A lot of advocacy, one. Two, centralize decision-making processes. You can look at illicit cash flows, financial flows from three perspectives. From the perspective of settlement, a settlement culture. When people are in power, they're beholden to some political actors. And in that way, they have to keep these loopholes open, those people, so people can be settled. Sometimes to keep the peace. Everybody knows Niger Delta, for instance, on oil theft. I'm sure everybody knows who the criminals are. And I'm certain the security people know who they are. Can they act? No, they can't act. So again, it's not that policy gap again. Now, in terms of coordinating policy development, it's a reference framework. already. The Nigerian Constitution provides enough guidance on how policy should be made. Now, any policy that takes its pinpoint from that is there. I've always, working for so many years in the oil and gas extractive space, working with a team of people who led to the Foster, managing the NRC in Nigeria and others, we didn't think the gaps were really political process and policies. We thought the gaps were the lack of implementation, standardization, understanding, and lack of referencing. That for me is where you start from. How do you reference this across the line? Here's what needs to be done. Here's how it should be done. And if it's not being done, here's who takes care of those not doing it. So again, it's more of that part of practice rather than that part of development of thinking. And in terms of coordination, we have enough ministers, we have enough agencies. My fear about creating new agencies, as we've done, if create this one, create that one, create that one, create that one, is what does it change? Nothing. More costs, more job for the boys, and then it makes life a little bit more difficult for even those implementing. So that's my take of it. Make it small and lean, make it adequate, let it be representative, and let it be detailed. That's my...
All right, so I'll be coming back to you later so we can take a look at some enforcement inconsistencies that we've seen in some of our policy implementation. But before we get to that, we'll be moving on to Jean-Pierre, who is online with us. Jean-Pierre, are you here with us?
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look at the extractive sector. They are quite vulnerable, and the extractive industries involve high-value commodities, complex supply chains, and discretionary licenses, conditions that make them prone to corruption. What structural or systemic issues have the extractive sector particularly been vulnerable to through corruption and illicit capital flows in Africa?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. First, I want to apologize, to thank CDG ID for the opportunity, and I apologize because I was supposed to be part of, to be with you in this room this morning, unfortunately. So yeah, that is a good question. I think that when it comes to talk about extractive sector, extractive industry, I think we only know about this we call the value chain, which basically help to structure, you see, opportunities as well as challenges that, that most of the countries faces when it comes to better manage, extractive sector. So number one, in terms of the block, the block number one of the value chain is the decision to actually extract, which basically, emphasizes on the need for the country to be able to set up, clear rules that got license, license allocation. So that is the issue. So I'm gonna maybe to pick up one example from DRC, because I know that we are a typical country where we have, both mining and the oil, sector. I think it's important. So just to highlight that, if you look very well what is happening, what's going here in the DRC, for example, you will see what when an investor comes to the DRC and he wants to actually to be granted the license, there are three ways for investor to actually get a license from the DRC. So the one of the way is to go through the cadastral meaning, what you call it in the mining cadastral meaning. I think that you know very well. The second way is that an investor that comes to the DRC can directly get license through in contracting with the SOE, which basically is state on it.
Oh, it seems the connection is going back there.
And then the last one is that the government itself actually grant the license. So we can switch off my camera. Maybe it will be better. Can you hear me?
All right, let's give that a try then.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Maybe I can switch my camera. Can I switch my camera? Maybe it will be better. Can you hear me here?
Well, we can hear you for now, so go ahead, Jean-Pierre.
Thank you very much. So I was trying just to actually highlight the fact that in DRC, for example, there are three ways when an investor comes to get the license in the DRC, if you want to mirror in the DRC, there are two ways that, that the investor can go through it to get the licenses. So number one, I was saying that, we have what we call it cadastre minier. We have number two is an investor can directly contract with SOE, which is state-owned enterprises. And then an investor can directly engage, contract or sign a contract with the government. So just that basically to show you, how vulnerable is the DRC system, for example, because you will see very well that when it comes to engage, to contract with SOE, to contract with the government, so there's no clear, guidelines, no clear rules on how do you do. So this has been leading to the opaque deals in the DRC, and which basically, provide a better environment for corruption and other, kind of practices. So that is the key issue. So for me, our version number one is really make sure that the country is able to put in a place, an open, transparent, awarding license system in the country. That is number one. Otherwise, I'm telling you that, country will be, facing, huge challenges with, illicit financial flows in the country, and that is, the issue. So I fully agree with, with member, previous, panelist member that mentioned the fact that, if first month of lose issue, but it's very important to make sure that, in a country that we don't have different ways of, being awarded a license, and that is number one. It's what can, and then number two is the enforcement, of course. But I think most importantly, make sure that awarding license guidelines are very clear, rules are very clear, and that we can leverage transparency. Otherwise, I'm telling you, it's a bit complicated to actually, face, yeah. So okay. that may be where, I will.
All right, Jean-Pierre, we'll be coming back to you in a bit.
Okay. Yeah, just a few moments, please. Would like to again appeal to our speakers to please take our words slowly so the interpreters would get the words for our French speakers, please. And also, let's please adjust the microphones to fit directly to our mouth so that the audio would be clear to everyone. Thank you.
All right, so we'll be moving on to Dr. Pade Davis, and we're going to be taking a look at continental frameworks, harmonization, and regulatory alignment. Now, the extractive industry is governed by scattered national laws, varying contract terms, and inconsistent regional commitments. Now, what, in your view, are the key regulatory gaps that must be addressed to ensure fair and transparent governance across Africa?
My name is Dr. Davis, and by virtue of what we're discussing today, we're looking at corruption in the extractive sector. For me, I'm going to concentrate on my strength. I'm a geologist and privileged to have compiled the mineral potential of Nigeria twice, and also having been in a position to coordinate the governance of the sector, and now a consultant with the African Union. Now, to answer your question, we all know the impact of corruption, especially in the solid mineral sector. From records available, yearly, Africa is losing about $88 billion on an annual basis. And despite all this, instead of minerals bringing joy to the people, it's bringing pains. Poverty is still reigning. Government is far from experiencing development. So what are the regulatory gaps that we need to put in place? Number one is weak governance. And when you talk about weak governance, You talk about the legislative and institutional framework. When you don't have sound legislative and institutional framework, you're going to have a lot of problems, especially in things concerning things like contracting. You need to put licensing of oil blocks, licensing of mineral, cadastral system. There must be transparency. Without that, we cannot move forward. The second thing under weak governance system is, of course, transparency and accountability. We're going to look at beneficial ownership registers. Right now, I can tell you the mining cadastre is liaising with CAC in Nigeria, and this should go across Africa. You can imagine the Human Development Index. The last 18, they are from Africa. Countries like Congo that are heavily endowed, but yet in poverty. So we need to look at the issue of opaque contracts. We need to make sure that contracts are transparent. We need to make sure that there is adequate disclosure. Also, we need to look at things like limited public disclosure. These are some of the problems and gaps we have. So for us to be able to move forward, we also need to manage revenue management and production. If I tell you in the oil sector, there are a lot of minerals down there, but when it is being mined, there is limited information about the quantity that is there. And so when you are going to negotiate with the community, when you don't know the amount of minerals down there, it's difficult for the communities to benefit from their own mineral endowment. So these are things and gaps that should be taken care of. What about the environment? The community should participate effectively, especially with regards to the environment, because they suffer a lot of degradation. You also look at policies that has to do with the impact assessment. How do you take care of the future after the extraction? All these are necessary for us to get to where we should be and checkmate corruption, especially with respect to capacity building. You have a community negotiating for their endowment, but the people negotiating don't even have the knowledge. You also have the issue of data. Data is not available to even know the quantity you have down there. So if you don't know the quantity, there's no way you can, determine so many things. Let me rest my case here. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to use those very important points that you, all right, so I'm going to use those very important points that you just brought up to segue into our next discussion. Ibrahim Adara, across many African countries, extractive industries operate in environments where oversight institutions are under-resourced, enforcement is inconsistent, and political interference is very, very common. Now, these weaknesses often open doors for corruption and distorted financial flows. Given this context, how does weak governance enable corruption and distort capital flows in Africa's extractive sector?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I think this conversation is really timely in the period where, as Africa continent, we are trying to shape our future for the next decade in the context of geopolitical change. And when I was entering the building, Babatunde took me through some of the achievement, outcome, and showing me the impact of the artificial intelligence driven decision-making impact on some of our development-related issues. So I think the extractive sector is at the center of that debate, and particularly the weak governance, based on my experience in this sector, we found that the key development paradox of our continent, the paradox of plenty, is really focusing on our governance challenge. And weak governance effectively create a permissive environment where corruption became embedded in the extractive value chain. So from licensing and contracting, production, and revenue collection, and particularly the state-owned enterprise management. If you take the case of contracting, the opaque licensing and contracting awards allow politically connected actors to acquire resource rights far below market value, diverting capital away from the public good. So discretionary exemption also and weak fiscal oversight lead to revenue leakages, including abusive transfer pricing, underreporting of production, and manipulation of export values. Poor governance also of state-owned enterprise often result in quasi-fiscal activities, off-budget spending, and politically motivated debt accumulation.
Recording in progress.
Finally, unregulated capital flow, especially through tax haven and anonymous companies, enable illicit financial flow that drain domestic investment capacity. So you could see that weak governance doesn't just allow corruption, it shapes the direction of capital, favoring speculative short-term or politically driven investment rather than productive development-oriented capital.
All right, so Dr. Padi, I'll be calling on your expertise on this. Now, tracking extractive revenues across the continent is often complicated by differing reporting standards and fragmented information systems. Now, what progress has been made towards harmonizing reporting standards among AU member states to better track extractive revenue?
Thank you very much once again. Now, when we need to quite understand what the AU is actually doing. And one of the things the AU in 2009, what the heads of states met, and they actually confirmed that there is need to use African resources to develop Africa. And because of that, the EU set up a center called the African Mineral Development Center. And this center is actually overseeing the issues of reporting standard, harmonization of standard, and all that. So the work that's been done so far, especially through the EITI, for Nigeria we call it NEITI, and what the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. And what they are doing right now is, they have made it mandatory that there should be public disclosure of revenue, of data, of production, and they have also developed what they call the data center to harmonize the different data producing centers. And what we are now looking at now, what is being done now, is to look at the regional perspective, how all the data needed to monitor for transparency is harmonized into a database. So the AMDC is actually looking at how all this data will be harmonized into a unified database, and it's accessible to everyone. And you need to disclose data for monitoring. Also, there is on the global perspective, you have what we call the International Financial Reporting Standard, IFRS Foundation. They are also doing a lot of work. It's been established for sustainable developing sustainable development standards globally. And what they're actually doing is to ensure that globally you can have a single access to data. From the African perspective also, from the global perspective, you have a committee, crisscross. And what do they do? What they do is to harmonize all data concerning minerals worldwide. So there is a standardization that is going on now, that any time you click, you can have your data. There's also the AMREC, what we call the AMREC initiative. Now, what are we saying about AMREC initiative? It's an African initiative from the AU, such that all the valuation of mineral deposits and the oil deposit, especially mineral deposit, let me be frank, they are all warehoused within a database, and their classification is technically monitored. And so far, this is what has been done. We also have what we call the PAC initiative, which is also what the African Union is doing to ensure that there is transparency, there is proper monitoring of resource data for effective management. Thank you.
All right, Ademola, will be coming to you now. Let's take a look at balancing FDI with safeguards. Now, many African states fear the strict anti-corruption rules may deter investors, yet weak rules will often attract corrosive capital. Now, how can African governments strike the right balance between attracting foreign investment and maintaining strong anti-corruption and transparency safeguards?
Thank you for your question. It's a very complex situation. Let me say something positive. Yesterday evening, I was invited with some select group of people to hear the NNPC about their published accounts. And the chief financial officer walked us through their account statements and how much was in the balance sheet and how much they'd earned. And I told the CFO, well, we've moved far away from where we were before. I told him that about 8 years ago, me and my team were walked out of NNPC because a publication was done online by one of our partners at that time, NRGI, on NNPC accounts. And NNPC angrily said we should leave NNPC and sort of banned us from coming. Now we're invited to come and listen to the breakdown of the numbers. Now, numbers sound very, very good. And numbers show a sort of pattern of increased investment. Now, being realistic, investments flow where there will be profits. Investments do not care about governance. It's not the job of an investor to take care about your governance. Before Donald Trump, we had what they call the Dodd-Frank Act, which was enacted by the US Congress to protect countries like Nigeria and other countries from activities of criminal investors in the country. But Donald Trump came in and repealed the law and allowed it free for all, anywhere you want to go. As bad as Libya is, as bad as all these countries are, there's a lot of money going to extractives, what you call corrosive capital. Now, it's on the people of the country to ensure that they develop laws and framework that get the money for their own growth. So even in ensuring that money flows into your country and investment comes and there's adequate return on capital, you design a system where a lot of the money also develops your community. One of the things I'm very proud of is what we did with the PIA. We spent 22 years on the PIA. My organization spent about £3 to £4 million on the PIA. Now we got the PIA passed. Now we've got host communities benefiting from PIA. Now almost every host community now, I can say about 95% have a community fund in their communities. Now, somebody, like you said, they might not know the value of what they should get, but there's some value going in. But that community fund has led to some development in some areas, if you look at the reports on NEPRC. So at the end of the day, it goes back to a simple thing. If we don't strengthen governance, not only in extractives, across board, if we don't strengthen democracy and the matrices of measuring democracy and impact, you cannot change anything in any sector. Be it extractives, be it mineral resources, being anywhere. Wherever there's allowance for state capture, in a manner that a very critical, a very small mass benefit and a critical mass lose, nothing will change. So back to the origin of it is strengthening governance, strengthening democracy, strengthening participation, and people should become more involved.
All right. Sorry to cut you off.
That's fine.
We have very limited time. I would like to get to Ibrahima before we move on to questions from the audience. Now, several regions, like Latin America, South Asia, Scandinavia, they've all experimented with governance reforms that have improved accountability of their extractive revenues. Now, can you share some examples of best practices from other regions that Africa can adopt to strengthen governance over a resource revenue? Please try to keep your answer down to 2 minutes so we can get to questions from the audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. When coming here, I was reading and then putting on my paper a few concrete examples in this space. And precisely in Latin America, for example, you look at, for example, the fiscal rule and sovereign wealth fund in the example of Chile and Colombia. For example, Chile, structural balance rule and independent fiscal council help stabilize revenue from copper, reduce volatility, and prevent political misuse. So you take the case of Colombia, where transparency requirement for royalty management, for example, ensure that subnational government are held accountable for spending resources, extractive resources. So I'll give another example in Mongolia, where public contract disclosure and budget transparency. Mongolia discloses all major mining contracts online and link mining revenue data directly to the national budget. So any interested citizen can see, for example, the revenue generated and to how it is linked to budget spending. So this kind of transparency policy really help to mitigate corruption and allow citizens to follow the money.
All right, thank you very much. We'll be going to the audience now. If you have any questions, I think we have about time for 2 questions. I saw his hand go up first, the gentleman in front. So please tell us your name, organization, before you go on to ask your question.
My name is Rotimi Olatunji, the president of the Association of Communication Scholars and Professionals of Nigeria. Talking about the extractive industry as a whole, I raised a question with my colleague this morning on the need for a kind of integrative, if not symbiotic relationships between the stakeholders in the extractive industry, particularly the academia. We have departments of geology all over the place, and then people come in to extract resources from your environment. The departments do not know anything about the resources in their environment. There was a case of Obafemi Awolowo University, where the federal government licensed a particular company to come and extract the resources in that university without the geology department getting involved. What are we doing to bring about this kind of integrative relationship so that we have a data bank across our universities, and it's not just for the academic purpose, but for the economic relevance of such courses in our university? Thank you.
All right, so who would you like to answer that question? Okay, so it's open to, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. I must say, let me use Nigeria as a typical, case study. There has to be synergy between all the stakeholders. And I can tell you, statutorily, the Nigerian Geological Survey has the mandate to be the custodian of all geoscientific data. Because without data, in this conference, we are talking about data. Without data, you cannot define your potential. And that is why you need to put together all the stakeholders to be able to get all the data and transform the data to information and information to wealth. And for you to do that, you need to bring everybody on board. All the universities, that's what we call the National Council for Mineral Resources. All the stakeholders are there, including the academia. You mentioned a situation whereby university, now, what should happen is that the University of Ife should transfer all their data to geological survey. Any mineral occurrence discovery geological survey should be notified, and it's vice versa. So when there is an allocation, maybe a license given to somebody around the university, one of the things you should note is that consent, that's what we call the consent of the community. And if consent is not given, the mining cadastre cannot approve the license. So every stakeholder must be carried along before a consent is given. So if University of Ife, they are concerned. If you look at University of Abuja, all the area around Abuja, University of Abuja is gold endowed. And so what the law says is that before a license is given, all the stakeholders should be consulted before their license is approved. So I guess it probably is an omission if they were not carried along. Thank you.
All right, Ademola, you have a response to that?
So the problem is even about the OAU situation you mentioned is a tragic issue. It's not every area where there's minerals that extract from. In many countries in the world where there's better thought and thinking, one of the first principles in the resource charter is a decision to extract. Where decision to extract is taken is when the benefits of extracting outweighs the destruction extracting will do. So for instance, just a corresponding example, Zimbabwe and Uganda found oil in some areas. But they realized extracting that oil would damage the natural resources in terms of animals and other things. And decision not to extract was taken. How do you license extraction in a university community with the attendant effects and dangers to people and studying that community? So it's not all the time about this conversation takes place. It's all the time that thinking is, when motivation is by greed, not by need, then we get this kind of warped situation we get in. And if you realize, if you followed up the meeting yesterday by the Southwest governors, part of the issues they talk about was illegal mining and what the effect of illegal mining is doing to the Southwest, across from Elisha to Ife to Anko. So that shouldn't have happened at all in the first place. And that shows the weakness of our laws in centrality of thinking. Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one more, but please try to keep your questions concise. So we'll take the lady at the back just to create some gender balance.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Shabslem, and I work with Primum Times, Nigeria. Thank you very much. My question is, every year, the Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative report shows that billions of dollars from Nigeria's oil and gas sector never reach the treasury. But yet, we see little improvement in public services, electricity, road, and even healthcare. As a journalist now, how... like someone reporting to the public, I want to ask, what practical steps will be taken to ensure that ordinary Nigerians finally see the benefits of their natural resources instead of just reading about the losses every time in the report? Thank you.
Dr. Pade, I think this one is for you.
Okay. I will also give you an experience. I actually, when I was in service, I worked with the custom. I was the chairman on the solid mineral side and also partnering with custom. Now, one of the things we should do is to ensure that our borders, they are tightened. you have a situation whereby we started an initiative. The custom man doesn't even know the minerals that is being taken out. He doesn't know. He cannot recognize it. And then minerals that are undervalued. You find a situation where somebody is telling you he's taking out tin, but within that tin, there are about 3 or 4 minerals there. He takes it to the border, and he will only be charged for 1 mineral. So you see, there are a lot of structures that will be put in place. Number 1, the borders must be sealed. Number 2, we need to involve technology. Because, for example, if you have a good laboratory infrastructure, in other countries, at the border, all your analytical results for that thing you are taking out must be done before it is taken out. So one of the things we can do is to adjust. Number 1, also, one of the things we did at the sector is to start to have a portal. Is to link all the portals together. For example, the solid mineral portal should be linked to custom. The solid mineral portal should be linked to finance. So anybody that is transacting in solid mineral, you must pay your royalties. As you move from one agency to another, there is the database are linked up. So we need to use a digital technology to actually cut revenue loss. I think there are a lot more. And I've also spoken about under-declaration. Because we don't have skills. You want to talk about value addition, but you don't have the skills to actually implement that. So I think these are the things we should look at. Thank you.
All right, so we do have an online question.
Sorry, before you go on, I feel it's very important I respond to our question, please. I'm not taking your panel over. The challenge with the EITI procedure and the narrative procedure in Nigeria is the lack of familiarization of many journalists with the process itself. I know you work for Premium Times, and I know your publisher is there. He knows that we spend a lot of money training you guys on EITI processes to understand how the reports are captured and how they should be reported. The gap is often in the writing of the narrative. When we are looking at the EITI processes is a reconciliation of accounts. It's not itself an admission of losses. Now, when it's reported from a loss-making perspective, Nigerians feel that this money was stolen or embezzled. But what EITI does is saying, from the information provided by the accounting system of the oil and gas companies, here is what we think has not been remitted to government. Now, you now come to the question of benefits to Nigeria. Every society benefits from the demand they make on their leaders. When demand is poor, leadership is poor. So far, Nigerians are more interested in politics than in governance. Until the narration changes to governance, we'll be in this state. Thank you.
All right, so Ibrahima wants to add something to that question, and then we'll be calling on Jean-Pierre, who has an online question for him.
No, thank you. I want to add my voice on this specific question about the losses. We can debate about the accounting system of the EITI, but obviously we know that we do register huge losses from our natural resource exploitation. And why every year we're reporting and nothing is being done, what can we do? In addition of what colleagues, co-panelists said, from my perspective, I think we need, we always say by experience that transparency alone doesn't lead to accountability. So how can we increase the demand side of the accountability? We need to be able to read properly the report, the oversight institution reporting on our public financing, and be able to raise adequate question to duty bearers. So, and make sure they address it. Because we do know all, most of the institutions' regulations are already in place, but there is a lack of implementation or lack of political will to implement effectively. So we need to put pressure. Someone said in the goodwill message that protest is not that bad that people are saying. So, which I also believe that we need to increase the demand side of the accountability to make sure what is reported, so they really, account to citizens, so that we can minimize the losses. If you allow, Madam Moderators, I want to address Professor also a question, in addition of what co-panelists said, and beyond the Nigerian example. In addition of the data, critical, data gap that we have in our almost all our development sector, and what colleagues said, I think beyond that, we need to value our local, national, regional institutions. Politicians, our own government need to give credit to your universities, research, our national research. It's not because we don't know or they don't know that resources are close to your university. For example, give the example of Senegal. Government today, if they want to know the kind of mineral resources we have, they have to go to France to ask them for the database. While we do have knowledge, we have research institute which can provide us all this information accurately, but we don't prioritize them, we don't give them credit. So we are here, and then the decision is between our local elite and the global capital. So to decide where to mine and where to do not mine. Thank you.
All right, we have an online question for Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre, are you still here with us?
Yeah. I'm still here for now, yes.
All right, can we get that question, please?
I can hear you.
Just hold on a second while we get that question, and it will be read out to you.
Hillary.
All right.
Favor Zimoni is asking, how can we address the politics of power play when it comes to foreign influence and negotiations in the extractive sector? That question is for you, Jean-Pierre.
Yeah, so can you repeat the question, please? How can we
address the politics of power play when it comes to foreign influence and negotiations in the extractive sector?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I'm very sorry for having lost most of conversation because I don't know over the quality of the connectivity. Yeah, that is I'm not sure if I have a correct answer on that question. But that is really a timely question because we are witnessing here in the DRC that all these superpower have been engaging with the country, signing a different agreement with Congo, and I think that to date we have about 6 agreements signed by USA, China, Japan, and EU and others. So basically, that is. For me, I think that again, this raise the issue of how African countries should organize themselves because I don't believe that any specific country in Africa can itself really deal with this superpower powers. So for me, my first perspective on that is that we are calling for the organization at the continental level. We should find out, all these countries that possess, huge natural resource endowment to actually, structure themselves, organize themselves. So that is for me, the first thought. The second one, I think that is in terms of the strategy, If you look very well, across the continent, we are seeing that few countries in Africa that, for example, have their own, mining policies, I'm talking about, especially critical minerals, policies, strategies. So I think that is important because if you are not able to actually have your own strategy, to set up your own goals, I'm telling you, I think that it will be very, very, difficult to actually, leverage all these, different, dynamics of power players. So for me, that is, so basically the answer, I think that in terms of, my point of view on that is, I think, number one, it's very necessary for all African countries to actually design their own strategies. I'm talking about, to have some specific, policies in Africa that set up clear objectives on why do we need to extract mineral? Why do we need to sell mineral? Do you want to be only, mineral sellers, or we think that we should take, advantage from our minerals? So that number, and then number two, I think that something should be done, at the continental level, because just think about how can you just think about the DRC, for example? You see the DRC being able to negotiate, a better deal with the USA, while, negotiating with China, negotiating with EU. I think that's a really, problematic issue. So for me, that is, it might maybe not the correct answer. But for me, that's what I think that the way that we should be, processed to actually, address all these issues. Yeah. So maybe I'll stop there. I don't know whether you will give me, moderator will give me, 1 minute is to, to make one few comment related, to the conversation, because, I got, dropped this, so I don't know whether I can have, the opportunity to talk about it. Can I make comment beyond that, please?
Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time, so we'll have to stop here.
But a very quick comment, please. So just to say that when we talk about the corruption is not an external issue, because not only external issues. We are talking about, investment that comes from Africa. We should consider that it is also a domestic issue. So we are dealing at the same time, fighting corruption against our leaders, fighting corruption with your different, investors that come in our country. I think that's very important. Things that we should keep in mind that most of African, political system are corrupted. So when we think about, the corruption on how to actually fight corruption within the extractive sector, we should keep in mind that there are actions that should be undertaken against, external, actors, but also, the action that should be done, that should be done, internally. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for giving me, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like you all to put a round of applause for our panelists. Well, thank you very much.